questions.
The question seeks to talk about what the Children's Rights Alliance are talking about child homelessness, and really the Department of Education's response to that, which obviously isn't the full response of the government, but I think that the Department of Education has a key role to play. The Children's Rights Alliance have a number of initiatives, but I suppose the report serves to highlight the challenges, first of all, that children and their families are facing with child poverty, and particularly homelessness, children experiencing homelessness, but the challenges also that teachers and schools face in dealing with the crisis as presented to them in school.
A range of resources are available to support schools in dealing with identified additional educational needs, including needs which may arise for children who are experiencing homelessness. These include National Educational Psychology Service supports in delivering equality of opportunity in schools, NEPS and JESH. Identification of need and early intervention strategies are considered key components to supporting children who are experiencing homelessness. The NEPS works with schools through the Department of Education and Skills Continuum of Support Framework. The NEPS model of service works through a problem-solving and solution-oriented consultative approach to support schools to meet the needs of individual pupils. NEPS psychologists can provide advice and guidance to principals and teachers in relation to individual student needs and in the development of whole school approaches to support inclusion, participation and integration. JESH is the main policy initiative of my department to tackle educational disadvantage. JESH provides additional supports through the JESH School Support Programme to schools identified as having the highest concentration of pupils from disadvantaged communities. Schools can use these additional resources to meet the identified needs of their pupil cohort, including the additional needs that may arise for pupils experiencing homelessness. JESH schools can also avail of homeschool community liaison and school completion supports provided by TUSLA's Educational Welfare Service in relation to school attendance, retention and progression, which can be areas of particular challenge to pupils experiencing homelessness. In addition, the Department of Employment and Social Protection runs the School Meals Programme, which provides funding towards the provision of food to some 1,580 schools and organisations benefiting 250,000 children. My department is also represented on the Homelessness Interagency Group established by Minister Owen Murphy to coordinate the state's effort to tackle homelessness.
I think the Children's Rights Alliance have, in the report they've published, they've recommended a number of ideas. First of all, obviously, this is not a Department of Education problem primarily, but that there would be what they recommend is that there would be an interagency group among the government, your department, Department of Children, and clearly the Department of Housing, to steer services and to see what each department can do. I think your department has a particular role. I think there needs to be, as the Children's Rights Alliance recommend themselves as well, maybe the the school completion programme for children in non-DESH schools. I mean, there's a lot of what's happening, particularly in the private rental sector, is that these children are not necessarily in DESH schools. You know, if you're in a local authority estate and your school is DESH, you have access to all these services. If you know, if that's the demographic of your area, but if you're in the private rental sector in a non-DESH area, you don't have access to many of the services. There are children who are losing out significantly in their education, whether through non-attendance or whether just by being exhausted in school. I think the department, as the Children's Rights Alliance recommends, need to track these children and track their progress to make sure that they are not losing their educational attainments. But I also think that something that you could do and should do immediately, Minister, is as they recommend, I think this is an easy thing to do, is issue a circular to provide advice and guidance to schools in relation to educational provision for children experiencing homelessness, recommendations to board and management to address school costs and voluntary donations, etc. But some bit of instruction and advice from your department, I think, would go a long way.
Yeah, look, I think that's a fair enough suggestion, and anecdotally, I'm picking up more examples of the prevalence of child homelessness in regard to teachers' feedback, where they're dealing with children in homelessness situations, and I think it would be a wise and important suggestion to ensure that whatever supports are available to schools, that all that information is available. But I can just point out that one of the, and from reading excerpts from the report from the research carried out by the Children's Rights Alliance, that one of the highlights in relation to issues is actually the lack of routine and predictability in terms of education continuity, and that's something which is very, very important in education. And look, I'll certainly ensure that boards of management principals are aware of what is available. But look, it is an issue which I'm picking up anecdotally, where teachers are having to deal with more incidents of child homelessness.
Final comment, Deputy Byrne.
Just say that the one thing, and you're a new minister to your portfolio, the one word that does concern me, and I think this reflects on the department rather than you, is anecdotally. You know, has the Department of Education any statistics, any information about the extent of the problem in schools? One of the recommendations from the CRA is that the children be tracked in terms of their educational attainments, but I'm concerned that you don't have the information about the individual children. You do know from the Department of Housing how many children are left homeless, but you don't know what's happening to those children in schools. You don't know what schools they're concentrated in. You don't know how their educational attainments are being mishandled now because of this crisis, and you don't know what resources schools need. So I'm suggesting now that the Department of Education really needs to up its game in relation to this, to make sure that these children are looked after and do not lose out educationally because of the homelessness situation that they and their families find themselves in.
Thanks for your cooperation, Deputy. Final comment, Minister.
Yeah, look, I think educational disadvantage has been one of the tackling educational disadvantage has been one of the positive outcomes of the work of the department over the last number of years. And what we're doing at the moment is we're reviewing the whole area of GESH and educational disadvantage. And educational disadvantage changes and it does evolve. New issues, new challenges arise. And as part of our review of GESH and even using the data we're compiling from air codes where people are living and in terms of the employment or unemployment issues with regard to certain families, but we need to be adaptable in terms of the change in nature, and certainly in the last 5 to 10 years homelessness has been an issue that has presented itself as a major issue, and no doubt my officials are aware of that, and certainly I'll be ensuring that whatever measuring instruments are used in terms of tackling educational disadvantage, that the continuity of education, the disruption, the lack of certainty for families and children going to school is part of any analysis going into the future.